We still have no baseball. It is official that the first two series are being canceled. We're reacting to that on today's episode of Locked On Cardinals. We're still going to talk a little bit of baseball, including about how the Cardinal bullpen ranks in relative to the rest of the division. And the Cardinals announced a new Hall of Fame class for this year. Talking all that and more on today's episode of Locked On Cardinals.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily St. Louis Cardinals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Cardinals for Friday, March the 4th. Happy Friday, everybody. Thanks for tuning in today and every day, and thank you for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen of the day. We are free and easy to find on every single podcasting platform, as well as on YouTube. Thank you for watching. If you are watching on YouTube, up to over 600 subscribers on the channel, so thank you very much. And if you're listening on a podcasting platform, thank you as well. My name is Lucas Smith. Thanks once again for tuning in to Locked On Cardinals. Sadly, we still are without baseball as the lockout has continued despite 10 days of negotiating, including a nearly 14, 15-hour consecutive negotiation period. We are still without baseball. So we'll be talking about that a little bit today, but we're also going to stick to some baseball talk with the Cardinals, talk about the Hall of Fame class, we're going to continue the series, talk about where the Cardinals rank within the division on certain topics. One of them today will be the bullpen. Supposed to have 3 of them this week, but with the Alec Burleson interview happening on Tuesday, only 3 shows a week still during the lockout for Locked On Cardinals. Are going to have 4 next week. We'll talk about the rest of the options with the rankings within the division. Going to be a fun week, but sadly we are going to start with the lockout and the update on that as it just continues to get worse and worse for baseball. The owners, Manfred, the union, Tony Clark, players could not come together on a deal, and it was announced that the first two series of the season are postponed, or not postponed, are canceled, and the MLB has come out and said, hey, we're not making up games. We are canceling games, players not be paid. That could be a point of contention here in future negotiations, and that could be a whole nother thing as well. But nevertheless, we move on and we just deal with what we have. We deal with the problem at hand right now, and that is the fact that we are still going to be without baseball. Spring training still is yet to happen. Spring training is delayed at least until next week, if a deal is reached by then. I know that Thursday, lead negotiators for both sides met, but it's just one of those things that is just overly frustrating, because you had Sunday night, day before the deadline. Maybe it was Monday night. I don't know. It all runs together at this point, where you had reports of optimism, reports of, hey, we might be able to get a deal done soon. If not in this session, we'll go till the 5 p.m. quote unquote deadline that was set on Tuesday, extended the self-imposed deadline. You had some optimism, and then all of a sudden Tuesday the report started to change. Players said, hey, our tone hasn't changed at all. It's media reporting different things. Who knows what the real truth is? You can believe what you want to believe. The fact, the without a doubt fact, is that neither side were able to come to a deal, able to come to an agreement, and we are still without baseball. And they seem to get closer on certain issues. CBT still seems to be a major tipping point one way or the other. A large difference still remains in the competitive balance stacks, the CBT. That's disappointing. Some things that we are likely to see, a 12 to 14 team postseason. I would much rather it be 12 teams. Keep the postseason, still somewhat exclusive, but still expanded. I understand the desire for playoff expansion. With the universal DH, you might see some smaller bases or larger bases, might see a lot of different things in the next CBA if we ever get one. But they're still far apart on league minimums. They're far apart on the CBT. They seem to be farther apart still on draft pools and lotteries and things of that nature. So you could go one or two routes, or you could say, hey, we got some optimism, or you could say, hey, we're still really far apart on key issues. It's not like they're far apart on little things. They're very far apart on key issues that I still think are going to take a long time for the the two sides to come together and say, hey, let's get a deal done. Let's do this. It was nice to have at least a little bit of negotiations finally, because I've been saying this for a while. A lot of people have. Where was this 10-day consecutive 10 days consecutive negotiating period in December, in January, even in February? Where was this 14, 15, 16-hour consecutive negotiating period in December, in January, in February? It's just one of these items that we still talk about as the league just missing. It's just another example of these things being so frustrating, because these negotiations could have been happening at this level for a much longer time rather than just right at the deadline. And I get that deadlines spur decision making. When you have a deadline, it's what procrastinators do best are under the heat of a deadline. And I know that because I'm a procrastinator. I understand these things. When there's a deadline, yeah, when you get closer to that deadline, things start ramping up. But with this, when it's a little bit different when you're talking about a homework assignment in class versus a collective bargaining agreement for Major League Baseball and the Major League Baseball Players Association. I feel like that might be a little bit more important thing where you don't want to maybe procrastinate on that. So I'm not going to spend too much time talking about it, because my thoughts are out there. You know my thoughts. It's frustrating. Whatever side you're on, whether you want to say you're on the player's side or you're on the owner's side, you're on neither side, whether you want to call it millionaires versus billionaires, whether you want to call it employers versus employees, whatever you want to call this debate, we can have those conversations. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about it today. It's a Friday. We're going to have some fun on this Friday. Next week, Lindsey Crosby of Locked On MLB Prospects and Josh Neighbors of Locked On Nationals did their own crossover, detailing a little bit more information on negotiations and the finances behind it. So next week we're going to share clips of that show on this show, and I'm going to go through it, give my thoughts, and just kind of give my perspective on those things. If you want to listen to the whole episode, it's on Locked On MLB Prospects on wherever you get your podcasts as well. So go ahead and listen to that. We're going to spend the rest of today talking about baseball. I've only spent 6-7 minutes talking about the lockout, as much as I can handle, because it's frustrating. I don't want to be frustrated on Friday. I don't want to frustrate you guys on a Friday. We're going to continue to talk baseball. Okay, we're going to talk about the bullpen rankings in the for the Cardinals and the rest of the division, and where they could rank coming into 2022, because I think that we need to just talk about baseball right now. Okay, talk about that, as well as I mentioned, the Hall of Fame class was announced. Hall of Fame votees were announced, who the Cardinals can vote for the St. Louis Cardinals Hall of Fame. Talk about all that and just a little bit more coming up here in just a moment on Locked On Cardinals. But first, I want to tell you about a way that you can have a delicious treat while remaining healthy, and that is Built Bar. Built Bar are the candy bar that tastes like, they're a protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. That's how good they are. I get them mixed up in my head all the time. They also have the Built Bar Puff, which is a protein-infused marshmallow treat. That is right. Fluffy, marshmallowy. They're not just a protein bar. They're a treat covered 100% in chocolate, just like a Built Bar. So if you want a delicious treat and stay healthy, get yourself some Built Bars. You can also go to Built.com, scroll down to the macros chart, and be blown away by how healthy these things are. Most Built Bars are at 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, 17 grams of protein. Candy bars have much higher numbers, much unhealthier numbers in all of those categories. So don't have a candy bar. Get a Built Bar. You can choose from countless flavors: mint brownie, coconut almond, white chocolate cookies and cream was their February flavor. Built.com has limited time flavors coming out often, so be sure to check out Built.com often. And if I haven't enticed you enough, go to Built.com right now and use promo code LOCKED15. That is LOCKED15 to get 15% off your order. One more time, that is promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. When you think bullpen and when you think Cardinals, when you think Cardinal bullpen, you think, or at least I think, it's the area that the Cardinals need to be aggressive at when this lockout ends. Get some signings. I know Joe Kelly's been a name floated around. It was reported last week that he said that he wants to return to the Dodgers. So you don't know if that's a reliable option. Maybe they go out and get a Ryan Tepera. Maybe they go out and trade for Craig Kimbrell even. who knows? A couple different options, as well as from the left side. The Cardinals are going to need some help. I've talked about it a lot as a Brad Chafin to replace an Andrew Miller, or maybe even or Andrew Chafin, or a Brad Hand. Options are out there in the bullpen, because when you look at their 2021 numbers from a relief standpoint from the Cardinals, you get you don't get very great results. When you look at the ERA in terms of ranking within the rest of the National League, the St. Louis Cardinals were at a 3.97 ERA. That is seventh lowest in the National League, and the other NL Central teams are pretty close, because you've got the Brewers sitting at 4.02, that's eighth. Cubs at 4.39, that's ninth. Pirates at 4.55, that's 10th. Cincinnati Reds are actually last in the Central and 13th in the National League overall with a 4.99 ERA. You go into a couple different numbers that I like to look at, because with bullpen, ERA can't be the defining factor. It's just too unpredictable. ERA isn't always the best factor. So you look at WHIP, walks plus hits over innings pitched, so on average about how many base runners they're allowing per inning. Brewers relievers had a 1.30. That was sixth in the National League, first in the NL Central. Cardinals then at 1.32. That is seventh in the National League. Cubs were at 1.34. Reds at 1.38. Pirates at 1.39. And then the good old opponent batting average. Cardinals actually had the lowest among National League Central teams at 222, and that was tied for second in the entire National League. So you middle of the pack for a lot of these, and then you jump up to second for the Cardinals with the batting average. Cubs were actually tied for fourth with the Brewers at 226. You've got the Reds then at 236, and the Pirates are 10th in the National League at 241. To the bullpen, a team is only as good as their bullpen, especially when you get into October. You see the teams with great bullpens usually come out on top, usually come out victorious. And the Cardinals are going to need to shore up that bullpen, because what killed the Cardinal bullpen, especially early on, were walks per nine. Because the walks per nine, the Cardinals were not good at. They were dead last in the National League, 4.54. Their relievers were walking 4.54 batters per 9 innings. That is not good. And their strikeouts per 9 innings were lower than the middle of the pack. They were 11th at 8.86 strikeouts per 9, and that sets their strikeout to walk ratio at 1.95. That is the lowest in the National League. They were the only team that were under 2 strikeouts to walk ratio. So for every 1.95 strikeouts, they're walking a batter as well. So not a great ratio. You don't want a 1-to-1 ratio there when it comes to strikeouts and walks. Walks were the issue, and that was early on a lot, late in the season, early on overall, and late in the season specifically for Alex Reyes, as he kind of fell off the table. The Cardinal bullpen is a fascinating one, because you do have some excitement. You've got, if Alex Reyes returns to a bullpen role, there is some thoughts on whether or not he'll be a starter. Once to try to starter, you're going to have Jordan Hicks, who also is reported wanting to be a starter, but he could be electric in the bullpen. You've got some exciting young names as well. Cody Whitley is a name that I'm extremely excited for. Ryan Helsley, who was hurt a large portion of the season last year. Genesis Cabrera, Giovanni Gallegos, obviously exciting. But it's coming to this point, especially for guys like Cabrera, for guys like Gallegos and Helsley, these guys that have been around a little bit, starting to get to that veteran status a tad bit, maybe a little bit more with Gallegos. It's time to produce, great numbers. It's time to not just look good or not just have the potential, but time to really produce on the numbers. Giovanni Gallegos did so last year. He was phenomenal. Reliever of the year for the St. Louis Cardinals. I think he should be the closer. Even if Alex Reyes is in the bullpen, I think Giovanni Gallegos should be the closer. We saw Reyes just not have the ability down the stretch to handle close games. He became susceptible to the long ball late in the season. That could have been due to overuse, and overuse in the sense, that now his pitches were flat, wasn't able to get the same bite. But at some point, when you were walking as many players as Alex Reyes was walking, you were going to get hurt. And he got hurt a handful of times, giving up a 5-1, 6-1 lead against the Cubs comes to mind. Grand slam against the Brewers comes to mind. Home run against the Pirates comes to mind late in the season. All those happened late in the season. I think the Cubs one was the earliest, and that was in June. So I wouldn't trust Alex Reyes in the ninth inning until he earns that spot back. But even then, if you give it to Alex Reyes to start the year, if you give it to Giovanni Gallegos to start the year and he runs away with it, there's no need to give it back, because I don't think that just because Reyes had it last year and he could earn it back doesn't mean that he's entitled to it if he performs. If he performs well as the 8th inning guy, 7th inning guy, or even as a spot starter, long reliever, great. Let him flourish in that role. But even with all the excitement and the upside in this bullpen, it's still one that just needs help. You saw Luis Garcia and TJ McFarland come in last year and save this bullpen because now, I talked about it a lot, Mike Shildt didn't have just those three arms of Reyes, Cabrera, and Gallegos. Now he had two other arms that he could go to, and especially with TJ McFarland being a double plays machine out there on the mound, getting double plays left and right, somebody you could bring in and expect a ground ball. And they got TJ McFarland back. They lost Luis Garcia to the Padres. So I think they, in a perfect world in my mind, they're bringing in two high leverage arms, right-hander and a left-hander. Not, TJ McFarland and Luis Garcia worked out. They did. Wade LeBlanc worked out enough, but the Cardinals need to bring in some high leverage arms. I know Wade LeBlanc was a starter for most of his Cardinal tenure, but the Cardinals need high leverage arms. They need arms that can, maybe not a closer, but good to great options that you can bring in the fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth inning and be comfortable with your chances. Okay, I think Joe Kelly is a great option if you're able to convince him to come back to St. Louis. Excuse me. The price tag on him might be a little bit high, but the bullpen I think is one of the weaker areas the Cardinals have. And when you look around the division, it's not exceptionally strong. There's not really a whole lot that separates these teams in terms of their bullpen. The Brewers obviously have a phenomenal bullpen with Josh Hader, and St. Louis and Devin Williams in the back end there. The Brewers pitching staff as a whole is just absolutely ridiculous. There's a reason I ranked the Brewers starting staff as the top team in the division, the top rotation in the division. And if you listen to Monday's show, and even the bullpen is just phenomenal. And I think that these teams in the Central Division are going to have to make improvements in order to separate themselves in the bullpen standpoint. The rotation, I think, is pretty much set for these teams. I don't think a lot of rotation moves are coming. The Brewers have already made an offensive move, signing are going to need to make an offensive move, losing Ciel Garcia, and they also traded for Hunter Renfroe as an outfield bat as well. So you're going to see some offensive moves there. The Cubs are going to need to find some way to replace Bryant, Baez, and Rizzo. They've already got their pitching moves kind of handled with Miley and Stroman. You've got the Pirates that I don't think they're going to make any moves, as well as the Reds, because I just see the Reds, if anything, losing starting pitching. I think they're going to lose Castillo. They could lose Sonny Gray as well, or at least Castillo. His name's been brought up in trade rumors a lot. So I don't see a lot of starting pitching help coming. Maybe the bullpen help for all these teams is coming. So it's really hard to rank these teams right now with where they're at. But I just think you're going to see the Pirates in fifth when it comes to the final bullpen ranking. You're going to see the Cubs come in fourth because their bullpen wasn't great last year. They lost Andrew Chafin, who was one of their top bullpen arms. And then they get worse with losing him. And they haven't really made a bunch of moves to bring anybody back outside of Miley and Stroman, as I mentioned. So I go Pirates 5, Cubs 4, and then I go Reds 3. But again, those three are really kind of a toss-up in terms of who's going to be bad on a worse day. Reds might have a little bit more depth with Hoffman maybe coming in every once in a while. Garrett is somebody that can be effective at times. But, when they got rid of Raciel Iglesias, that was a tough loss because I really liked what Iglesias brought to the mound. I think that he's a dominant closer when he's at his best, and performed decently well in LA last year. I go Cardinals 2 and I go Brewers 1, but again, the difference so when I look at the rotation, it was also Brewers 1, Cardinals 2, right? But I think they're neck and neck. I think they're closer than other people think, minimum. I think that rotation for the Cardinals has a chance to just be really strong. Okay, but when I look at the bullpen rankings, it's a little farther apart. I think 2 through 4, or excuse me, 2 through 5 are pretty close. Obviously some separation because that it's a ranking, it's a separation. But at the end of the day, the Brewers just had the best bullpen. I know Hader might be faulting a little bit. I know Williams hurt himself late in the year last year, but that bullpen is still pretty dominant. They're not the Dodgers level per se, but we looked at the numbers, and the Brewers tend to separate themselves more than the other bullpen arms did, or bullpen teams did. So for me, the Brewers are without a doubt the best bullpen in the National League Central. Now that said, if the Cardinals were able to go out and get a high leverage righty and a high leverage lefty to help replace Luis Garcia and Andrew Miller, then that puts them in the conversation. But right now, with it being the biggest area of improvement for the Cardinals, it's hard for me to rank them anything higher than second, but it's still, I think, stronger than the other teams in the division, even with the wildness of the team last season. I think this is a strong bullpen. Let me know what you think in the YouTube comment section below, or you can email the show, lockedoncards@gmail.com. You can also DM me on Twitter at LJFastball, DM the show on Twitter at LO_Cardinals, or on Instagram, same username there, LO_Cardinals. So let me know what you think about the Cardinals bullpen scenario for 2022. There's no doubt that they need to bring some arms in. They need to make some improvements, but I still think that within the National League Central, they're okay. Now, the National League Central is a weaker division, in my opinion, and if they expand to 12 teams, you're only going to need 82 to 86 wins to qualify for the postseason. So in that case, then I think the Cardinals look really good for a postseason spot. But if you want to win your division and set yourself up best for the playoffs and have a good regular season, I think a bullpen is what's needed for that. A good bullpen is what's needed for the Cardinals, and that would include making some moves here this offseason. So that'll do it for the bullpen ranking. So again, next week we're going to go through other facets of the Cardinal team and what they rank in the division. We're going to have at least 4 shows next week. We're going to go over the lineup, how the lineup ranks with other teams, as well as the defense. Spoiler alert, defense is going to be really good. The manager ranks as well as overall ranks in the division. So exciting stuff next week. But again, with that Alec Burleson interview this week, and didn't record on Ash Wednesday or yesterday. So we'll be looking at that. And then again, roundtables coming up with discussion with me and the other NL Central hosts are coming up the week after that. So the week of St. Patrick's Day. So that'll be super, super fun. But that's where the bullpen talks are going. Take one more quick break, and then I'm talking about the Cardinals announced their 2022 Hall of Fame class. Kind of go through just the names, and only one person gets in this year, and that makes it that much more difficult. So talking about all that and more coming up here in just a moment. But this episode is also brought to you in part by BetOnline, because football season is over, but basketball season is ramping up. Conference tournaments are already starting this weekend. March Madness is right around the corner. Pro hoops are post All-Star break. They're getting ready for the postseason. So for all the latest odds, totals, player performances, props, and to even where the next fired coach is going to land, BetOnline.net is the number one spot for all of your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline is your source for hockey, boxing, UFC, odds as well. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and actions. Bet Online, where the game starts. So the 2022 Hall of Fame ballot will feature Steve Carlton, George Hendrick, Matt Holliday, as well as Matt Morris and Edgar Renteria. Hendrick and Holliday are the 2 additions to the team, or to the ballot rather. And it was kind of funny. It was X amount a number of years ago, just the other day, that Steve Carlton was traded away, and now he's on the 22 Hall of Fame ballot. So for this, they only look at their Cardinal careers. Voting is going to for who gets in or not. So the voting is going to be from March 5th through April 15th, and the enshrinement happens later this season on August 27th. 47 members currently in the Cardinals Hall of Fame, according to the article on MLB.com. Kind of going through. You got some really good options. George Hendrick, for those who don't know, is nicknamed Silent George, and it says here, quote, because of his low-key personality and his refusal to speak to the media, end quote. He had the game-winning RBI in Game 7 of the World Series in 1982. He was on the team for 78 to 84. He led this franchise in home runs and RBIs from 80 to 83. So he was, I think, sometimes a forgotten dominant hero in the late 70s, early 80s for the Cardinals. And as I mentioned, Steve Carlton, National Hall of Fame member. If he were a lifetime Cardinal, he'd be in the Cardinal Hall of Fame already, in my opinion, but just does not have that red jacket. Won 75 games before turning 27 years old. Other pitcher on the ballot, Matt Morris, won 101 games with the Cardinals from 97 to 2005. Another arm that I think people forget about a lot. 18 complete games, 2 All-Star appearances from 97 to 2005 for Morris. Edgar Renteria, I think, was the last long tenure, just really above average shortstop the Cardinals have had for more than just a couple of years. He was a Cardinal from 99 to 2004. He was a 3-time All-Star, Silver Slugger Award, 2-time Gold Glove Award winner with the St. Louis Cardinals. And then we all know about Matt Holliday, World Series champion, was really an anchor in the lineup with Albert those days. So I'll have to do a little bit more research in terms of, if I had, I guess I do have a vote, I could just go to, the website and vote, but who I would vote for, because I think it's good that only one person gets in. I think that if the Cardinals continue to do 2 each year for the player or from the fan vote, then it starts to kind of get diluted at some point. But again, just to kind of run through everybody's numbers, these are just on the Cardinal website. Steve Carlson from 65 to 71, 3.10 ERA, 1.28 WHIP, 66 complete games and 1,200 innings, 172 total starts. George Hendrick, 294, 345, 470, the slash line, 582 RBIs, 122 home runs, throwing 187 doubles over close to 900 career games. Matt Holliday, 293, 380, 494, 616 RBI, 237 doubles, 156 home runs, 900 games there, 982 to be exact. Matt Morris, 101 wins, as I mentioned, 3.61 ERA, a tad high, 1.27 WHIP, 18 complete games, 8 shutouts as well in 1,377 and a third innings pitched. And Edgar Renteria from 1999, to 2004, 290, 347, 420, the batting average, 451 runs driven in, 207 doubles, and he was the speed demon of the group with 148 stolen bases across 903 career games. Let me know who you plan on voting for. I believe you can vote at least once a day, but let me know who gets your vote for the Cardinals Hall of Fame, as that voting starts on the 5th of March. That's going to do it for today's episode. I will wrap up with more lockout conversations, just that I don't understand why they're still not meeting. I understand taking a couple of days after Tuesday to kind of recollect your thoughts and get back. They had an informal meeting the lead negotiators did on Thursday. I don't know why they're not meeting today. And by the time this is posted, and they could already have had a meeting and a deal. I don't know. But at the end of the day, they need to be meeting every day until this deal gets done, in my opinion. But be sure to tune back in next week. As I mentioned, a lot of good stuff coming next week, talking about Cardinals ranks within the division, among lineups, defense, managers, and revealing the overall ranking for the Cardinals within their division. It's going to be a good week of Locked On Cardinals content, and maybe, just maybe, a hard maybe, we'll have news on the lockout being ended and baseball resuming, and we'll be flourished with offseason moves and trades and free agent signings. But until then, hope you guys have a good weekend. I'll be in Dallas officiating, so super excited for that, officiating some club basketball games in Arlington, to be specific. But until I talk to you guys on Monday, be sure to stay safe, stay well, and have a fantastic rest of your day.